For that. Joining me now, Robert Taylor, political commentator. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David.
Are we seeing the first dividend of Brexit?
I'd say the second big dividend after the vaccine rollout, of course, during COVID, which everyone said was the first. So I would say this is the second big obvious one, along with obviously the supporting democracy, which a lot of EU countries didn't do after their people voted against a particular EU treaty. In our case with Brexit, our great and good were finally persuaded to let us Brexit, which is great. But in terms of since Brexit, I'd say this is the second big dividend.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we know Donald Trump has long hated the EU. He believes that it was set up to basically go up against the United States. In many senses, actually, is the United States of Europe. In 2016, he said the bloc was created to beat the United States when it comes to making money. He called the EU later on, this is 2 years later in 2018, he said it was a foe on trade. I imagine revenge is a dish best served cold.
Well, I imagine so. I mean, he's always been very anti-EU for just the reasons you describe. And what he's really saying is, look, we in America, he's saying, are now doing to the EU what the EU has always done to America. In fact, if you believe Donald Trump, EU puts tariffs at around 39%. By the way, I'm not quite sure how Donald Trump had that up. And the Americans are going to say, no, we're just going to put 20% on the EU. So I'm not quite sure he adds up its figures, but it certainly does look like sweet revenge.
I wonder how this is playing in the United States. I mean, just in terms of the markets, I was saying that when I watched them at 8 o'clock this morning, they all sort of slid massively. And of course, then we saw sterling rise as a result. Just in terms of the American sentiment, essentially what he's doing is putting the American people first. He's incensed that no one seems to buy, or other countries don't seem to buy American cars. He doesn't understand why that is. And of course, these tariffs are going to impact, as I said, the likes of Jaguar, Land Rover. They're now trying desperately to work out how they open production facilities in the United States to avoid those tariffs. I'm also thinking of Johnny Walker whiskey, for example, which will be hit. I mentioned AstraZeneca earlier and GSK earlier as well. There are other big businesses. Rolls-Royce, there's another one, for example. BAE Systems, another one. So actually the impact of this is far-reaching. The Labour government keeps saying, oh, we're almost there. We're almost there with this FTA. I don't believe them.
Well, I don't know whether they are nearly there or not. They've had quite some time now since Keir Starmer came in to sort out a free trade deal. They had what they would consider to be a very friendly president in Biden. Now they've got someone who doesn't quite align with them philosophically. Are they going to get a deal with him? Well, it will be in Britain's interest to do so. And let's remember that if we were in the EU, we would have no hope of negotiating a trade deal on our own. We'd have to go in with what the rest of the EU were doing. So at least we have that on our side.
Absolutely. And of course, Trump, I think you have to match Trump. And I think you need to tread very carefully. And as I said earlier, whilst the EU will go in with all guns blazing and then announce retaliatory tariffs, I think actually the smart money is on us not doing anything and actually sitting there and thinking, how do we reduce our own tariffs? Because that will bring Trump on side. We know Trump is an Anglophile.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, that is what the Starmer government is going to do. They started off well in the Oval Office about a month or so ago. That was a good meeting. I think many of us sort of patted Starmer on the back for that. And now he's got to follow through on that and say, well, if we really do have this soft, friendly relationship with Trump, we've got to reduce that 10% to getting down to zero. We can do it. We know he loves Britain. We know he just wants a fair deal. So let's get around the negotiating table and see what we can do.
Talking about Trump, Elon Musk, well, apparently he is going to step back from his role as a senior White House aide. This is according to Trump telling the inner circle. It's interesting, isn't it? Because, of course, he was brought in to do DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. My understanding was this is only a temporary role anyway. It's meant to end on the 4th of July. It looks, actually, that it will be expedited, partly because I think he's such a loose cannon. Trump clearly trusts Elon Musk, but there are lots of people in that administration who are not that happy.
Well, that is the point. So we're not sure now whether Musk is leaving because his 130-day contract is up. I would have thought that there would be a way around that. If Trump really wanted Musk to stay on, surely they can get around that contract. Or is it because Musk has upset people in the Trump administration with his rather aggressive handling of government? It could be a bit of both, but it does, for the moment, sound as though Musk is going back to commercial business, shall I say.
Well, and also you have to bear in mind, £580 billion has been wiped off the value of US tech. Now, clearly, he owns all of those companies, including Tesla, and there are big problems. In fact, in Tesla, they're talking about trying to remove him as the CEO because, of course, people are having their cars vandalised and so on because of his affinity with Donald Trump. So it may be that actually he needs to go back and concentrate on the day job.
He might do. I mean, there are a few people in the world who can afford to lose $530 million and just say, oh, well, never mind, that's spare change. But I think Musk is one of them. But even for Musk, that's quite a big figure, and he must have that in the back of his mind as well. I think you're quite right there, David.
Let's talk about the Chagos Islands, because I was absolutely gobsmacked that Donald Trump had given that the rubber stamp and it had gone back to the Labour government. Now, we learnt that actually MPs now are going to get a chance to block Sir Keir Starmer's deal to give away the Chagos Islands. Apparently, a bill will now be brought forward to write the treaty into law once it's ratified. So essentially, it's got to go through the Commons, it's got to go through the Lords, and the various processes in between. How do you think this is going to play out? I mean, I think it's perfectly bonkers to give away something we already own. Then you're paying a huge amount of money to lease it back. It's strategically important, and we've only got a 99-year lease. I don't know who's in charge of this deal, but if I was a member of Parliament, I'd block it.
Well, I think I would be inclined to block it very much as well. But you've got to remember, Labour's got this huge majority. Are enough MPs going to go against the government on this carefully negotiated deal? It sounds very unlikely. It sounds obviously as though the Tories will go against it, but they've only got about 130 MPs. So all those Labour MPs are pretty much going to support this. What happens?
Do you think so? Or do you get a sense, I mean, this is what I saw, which I'm beginning to see discontent already within the Labour rank and file, because they can see that their constituencies are in peril. I think many of their constituents will be saying, look, I think most like-minded people will be saying this Chagos deal is a joke.
I think most people in the country would say, why are we paying Mauritius to take the Chagos Islands off our hands? It just doesn't make... And why Mauritius anyway? They're thousands of miles from the Chagos Islands. So I think a lot of people will have that. It's just a question of whether this is something that Labour MPs are prepared to rebel on. I somehow doubt it. I think it's too early in the Labour premiership, Starmer's premiership, for a lot of his own MPs to humiliate him in that way. I just can't see it happening. But we'll see. We will see. Let's talk about Ed Miliband, shall we? My favourite character and the quest for net zero. There's a big article in the Times today. British households paid around £10 each on average on their energy bills last year to support a controversial wood-burning power station. This is all because of net zero. So here's how this works. So we, the taxpayer, gave them $869 million to Drax. This is a biomass facility. And essentially what we're doing is importing wood pellets, which seems absolutely bonkers. By the way, that's £2 million a day. We're importing the wood pellets. We're then burning it. They are saying, well, this is green because the trees absorb the carbon dioxide. It's absolute nonsense because the trees take years, if not decades, to absorb that amount of carbon dioxide. But this is all in the name of net zero. Yeah, and apparently this is costing the British taxpayer as a whole, all of us, what was it, £869 million last year. I mean, we're throwing these millions and hundreds of millions around willy-nilly. Why are we doing this? And even Green campaigners are worried about Drax and saying this company isn't as green as perhaps Ed Miliband and others in government think it is. So what we're seeing here is an alliance between Green campaigners on the one hand and those probably like you and me, David, who are just worried about the public purse on the other. It's this alliance. And we have to say to the government, why on earth are you spending all this money on this company?
But also the government keeps saying, Ed Miliband keeps saying, if you remember back, our energy bills will come down. You will be £300 better off every single year. That was a total lie. We are now paying more money than ever before for our energy bills. The energy price cap has gone up and there are no answers from government. And of course, we're now seeing more offshore wind farms being put in. There's a huge debate raging what's going to happen in terms of pylons over Kent, East Anglia as well, and people are really furious.
Indeed, just as Starmer said that the council taxes would be frozen, well, they've shot up yesterday. Same with energy bills. It'll go down by 300 quid a year for the average taxpayer by 2030. Well, no sign of that happening at all. And it's no wonder if we're spending £860 million a year on a company called Drax.
And of course, we can't afford to actually keep the heating on for elderly people at the same time. Let's just talk about some breaking news. Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander has said she has approved Luton Airport's expansion plan. This is another not net zero plan, despite the planning inspector recommending she reject it over environmental concerns. This is the major dichotomy in government, isn't it? So you've got Ed Miliband and his merry band who are pushing net zero. Then you've got the practicalities of trying to grow the economy. We should have invested in airports a long time ago, and we've been left in this ridiculous position where a transformer goes out, plunges Heathrow into darkness, and of course the country descends into abject chaos.
Well, absolutely. And the trouble is, Ed Miliband is apparently the most popular Labour minister among Labour Party members. So it's very difficult to just get rid of him. And of course, for Labour Party members, they're all into this net zero stuff. But the Prime Minister belatedly, and Rachel Reeves belatedly, is now beginning to realise that if we pursue all this net zero stuff, the economy is going to continue flatlining at best. So they have to approve Luton, they have to approve Heathrow, they have to approve a second runway at Gatwick. What does that mean for Ed Miliband? Well, maybe we'll hear from him in the coming days and weeks.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I don't know what you do. How do you solve a problem like Ed Miliband? What does Starmer do? Because, of course, the tension, as you say, between the Treasury and net zero is huge.
Well, it is. I mean, I wrote about this last week. We got rid of Just Stop Oil. Apparently, they're now going to desist from their campaign of direct action, which costs so much money and trauma for us all. Well, how about Just Stop Miliband? That's what we really need. We need Ed to either see the light or be shot back to the backbenchers.
Really good to talk to you. Thanks, Robert. Really good. Robert Taylor there, political commentator.